When you're actually locked down, you've no income coming in, and you're realizing, well, where is all this money coming from? And that starts to get you on a path, and it gets you asking questions and exploring the really important concept of money. Ultimately, I think most people on the planet now don't really understand what money is. And it's a complex subject, and I think it's designed that way from the legacy traditional system. It makes it seem so complex, but ultimately, when you break it down, it's such a kind of core concept that most people need to learn about, especially as a business owner. That was when I first got made aware of it, but it was only 2020 when lockdown came, when my business was shut down for 3.5 months, and started to see governments creating all this money out of nowhere. They were printing trillions in the US, billions in the UK, Ireland, and thought, well, everywhere's shut down. Where's all the money coming from? So that was the first time I actually asked myself the question, what is money? What am I working for? 2018 hit and the market, crashed back down again, and I kind of ignored it. I just thought it was just one of these things, a bit of a bubble. Didn't really get Bitcoin. I remember staring at the screen one time, looking at the chart, seeing Bitcoin at, I think it was £2,500 or about €3,000 at the time, but I just didn't understand what it was. I just thought it was a crypto like all these other
Alan
cryptocurrencies.
Bryden to the Larpar Show, where we talk about what is money, what is coming, and how to protect your family. Alan is an optometrist and owner of Bryden Opticians based in Northern Ireland. He's the founder of HODL Eyewear and Sats for Sight initiative and the host of the Sats for That podcast. So, the Stats for That podcast explores, educates, and promotes local businesses who are now choosing to accept Bitcoin payments. Um, it's an initiative that not only promotes small businesses to a wider and loyal customer base, but also brings awareness to the reasons why this technology and protocol is necessary and essential to bring lower prices and better lives to everyone. So, Alan, welcome. And how did you find Bitcoin and how has it changed your life?
Hey Lawrence, thanks first for having me on the podcast and the introduction. Yeah, it was. How did I find Bitcoin? Well, I suppose initially, if I take myself back to when I started my practice, that was 2007. Um, we actually at that point in time opened my practice. Myself and my fiance at the time bought our first house together, and obviously 2007, 2008. That was obviously the great financial crisis that we all have probably lived through. And the issue I had was obviously we bought our house 2007. 2008 came along and the house lost about £100,000 worth of value. I'm based up in Northern Ireland. So, you sit back and you think, well, what's going on here? What happened? So that was my first probably kind of direct insight into how the financial industry kind of manipulates, mess things up with, subprime mortgages and things like that. So I knew nothing effectively. Really knew nothing about money. I never asked myself the question, what is money? You go through school, you're not taught about money. You start your business, you're told to work hard, keep your head down, save for a rainy day, etc. So I was doing all those things, thinking this is what I need to do. I need to start my own business, grow my business, work hard, earn money, save money, potentially invest money. But 2008 was a real eye opener. But I sort of worked on it. It kept working, kept working. We got through all that, and then 2017 came around, and I got to the point where I'd been in my business for quite a few years, nearly 10 years at the time. And I was kind of exploring other things. I had my first child in 2014. When you have a child, you become a father, you start to think, well, I'm going to have to create something here, some form of wealth creation for the future. But ultimately, as an individual, as a business owner nowadays, you're kind of forced to speculate. You're forced to invest in potentially, you could call them risky assets. You're effectively forced to become a stock picker and trying to run a business, trying to focus on your profession, but also trying to do all these other things. It gets very, very confusing. And it's you get to the point where I was chasing things, you get shiny object syndrome, you get sucked into different things. But I started developing different businesses around online business, online marketing. And it was actually at an online business event in Peterborough in England in November, end of November 2017, when I was first made aware of what Bitcoin was. But it wasn't Bitcoin, it was more introduced to blockchain, all these buzzwords, blockchain, decentralization, cryptocurrencies. And it was at the time when Bitcoin went on its initial, that bull run, it went up to around about, I think it was 18,000 or $20,000 at the time. So that night, actually, the organizer of the event had a webinar with someone within the blockchain space. So I watched that webinar on the way home to the airport, through the airport in Stansted, and got really kind of hooked into this concept of this technology, Bitcoin, blockchain, etc. So spent a little bit of time then from 2017 just exploring the market. And I got introduced to various cryptocurrencies, started dabbling in those things, unfortunately. But then 2018 hit and the market, crashed back down again. And I kind of ignored it. I just thought it was just one of these things, a bit of a bubble. Didn't really get Bitcoin. I remember staring at the screen one time, looking at the chart, seeing Bitcoin at, I think it was £2,500 or about €3,000 at the time, but I just didn't understand what it was. I just thought it was a crypto like all these other cryptocurrencies. So that was when I first got made aware of it, but it was only 2020 when lockdown came, when my business was shut down for 3.5 months, and started to see governments creating all this money out of nowhere. They were printing trillions in the US, billions in the UK, Ireland, and thought, well, everywhere's shut down. Where's all the money coming from? So that was the first time I actually asked myself the question, what is money? What am I working for? And then I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on that. And then kind of randomly just ended up linking the two between what Bitcoin was and what money is. And then I started to realize, hold on a second, is this actually right? Is money just created out of thin air? Is it borrowed into existence? And ultimately, when you get to understand what money is, and then you realize what Bitcoin is, then that's when it all kind of clicked for me. But it took me another 2 years probably to really become specifically Bitcoin orientated and Bitcoin only in my thinking, in my kind of investment or savings thesis. So yeah, that was generally a long-winded kind of explanation into my journey into Bitcoin. So from 2022, I became Bitcoin only. As I say, I ended up going through the kind of painful journey of looking at cryptos, different cryptocurrencies, trying to invest in different projects, ultimately being kind of not led on, but sort of taking advice from other people that I thought knew about the space and kind of going on their advice on certain things. But ultimately, you come to learn you got to think for yourself. You got to think for yourself in the space. You got to realize and put in the work to understand what Bitcoin is. So yeah, I like tried different things within the space, lost money within the space, certainly in the crypto space. But ultimately, that all took me and led me to Bitcoin. And from 2022, I started accepting Bitcoin payments in my opticians, and started to develop other things outside that then based around Bitcoin. So that's generally my long-winded journey into Bitcoin.
I think a lot of people, a lot of us anyway, Bitcoiners that have come into Bitcoin recently, I think a lot of us came in around the 2020 when the
Hmm.
lockdowns happened, yeah. Whereas a
Yeah,
lot of other people maybe got sucked into the fear, yeah, of what was happening at the time. We were on a different path and we were trying to figure out what is really going on. Yeah,
yeah.
what's happening here? Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I think people were obviously it depends on your situation. If as a business owner running a small business specifically on the high street, those are the businesses that were really hit. And when you're locked down, when you're shut down, you've got time to sit back and think. And that period of time, like, we had a newborn baby as well. It gave me a lot of time to sit back and really be present with my family as well. And that was something that I wasn't doing. I was chasing all these things, wasn't being present. That was having an impact on my family and on my, relationships and personal relationships. And, money is such a foundational aspect to our lives. It's the base layer effectively of our lives in many respects. Um, but yeah, a lot of people who potentially, if you're employed somewhere, especially government jobs, you were, put on furlough or you were still getting your salary. There was no real issues there. People weren't really asking any questions. But when you're actually locked down, you've no income coming in, and you're realizing, well, where is all this money coming from? And that starts to get you on a path and it gets you asking questions and exploring the really important concept of money. Ultimately, I think most people on the planet now don't really understand what money is. And it's a complex subject, and I think it's designed that way from the legacy traditional system. It makes it seem so complex, but ultimately, when you break it down, it's such a kind of core concept that most people need to learn about, especially as a business owner. And I couldn't believe, I was in business for what, 13 odd years at that point in time. And I never asked myself the question, what is money? What am I working for? So yeah, it was I think it was a pivotal point in a lot of people's journeys in business and lives. And a lot of people, pivoted during 2020. And thankfully, a lot of people discovered Bitcoin in that point in time as well. Especially, you got big names in the space like Michael Saylor and, all these companies that have gone and done some crazy things in respect to the conviction of actually embracing Bitcoin and understanding it in a very short space of time and realizing how important it is and then putting it on their balance sheet, those kind of things. And it's something still that people are feeling, they feel this bit that Bitcoin is a risky investment or a risky asset. But if you look at anybody who has conviction and who's done the work, they will tell you the complete opposite. Everything else is risky. Fiat currency, fiat money, the fiat financial system is the risk, whereas Bitcoin is your life raft, your safety net.
Yeah, yeah, it's our insurance. And
Yeah,
once you really start looking at it, you get hope that there is something in the future. There's a
yeah.
light at the end of the tunnel, isn't there? Whereas a lot of people are just still going around the rat race and they're going around in circles and they're trying to get out. Just to me, anyway, it seems like we're out now, yeah, and we're probably never going to go back to the way we used to be before.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you can't blame people. People are doing their best. They're working, they're in jobs, they're in businesses. They're doing what they think they should be doing. And there's no shortcut around Bitcoin. You gotta take the time to understand it. That's the key thing. And once you do see the world from the perspective of what Bitcoin brings, you can't unsee it. And as you say, there is no going back then. You can't undo what you've discovered. And once you go on that journey, that process, it makes things so much clearer. And that what you said as well, Lawrence, it brings hope. That was funny. That was the first time, so it was in 2020, in a few years, in quite a lot of years, that I had actual hope for the long-term future. Having something that I can focus on, that I can embrace and save my economic energy in, and know that it will be preserved and it will grow for the future. And that was the first time I had that. And just knowing that, it brings a sense of relief in a way. It makes life simpler. I think it makes life easier because you're not having to go and take risks and try to stock pick and trying to, try these other risky investments that are out there because you just don't know what's going to happen there. It's out of your control. You're investing in a centralized, manipulated, fiat-backed system with different things built on top of that. Whereas with Bitcoin, you've got that core foundational, solid, ossifying layer of hard money, the hardest money that we've ever discovered. And when you build on top of something that's solid and foundation that can't be manipulated, can't be changed in any way, shape, or form. That's a real core asset to build anything on. So I think that's from a foundational point of view, that's where you got to kind of build your wealth and your life, your business from. And that's where I want to be building from in the future and from this point on.
Yeah, yeah, pretty true. Yeah.
Mm.
And then when you discovered about what is money, okay, what did you see that what was the problem with the money?
Yeah, well, it took a while. It does. It's depends where you get your information from as well. You can look at all sorts of things on YouTube and this, that, and the other. But the key core concept, I suppose, in realizing money itself, it's from what 1913 when it was basically the Federal Reserve was set up. And we all know, well, within the Bitcoin space, we all know the Federal Reserve, the dollar is the world reserve currency. It's controlled by the Federal Reserve, based out of America. But the Federal Reserve is a private organization. It's not federal. It doesn't have any reserves. And you realize that money can be borrowed into existence. It can literally be created out of thin air. And governments issue bonds, central bank buys those, and charges interest on it. And it's basically socialized. Everybody has to pay that back. And when you realize that money itself it's centralized and controlled by a few individuals or central banks or organizations. And you realize that those people can create um, money out of thin air effectively, and it's devaluing everybody else's purchasing power or wealth over time. So it's at the expense of everybody else for the few, that small percent of people that are benefiting from the money printer. You realize that, the centralized aspect of that and the security is based around the banks. So you have to put trust in the banks. And then when you realize that Bitcoin's come along, and it's those two core kind of components with Bitcoin, it's decentralized and secure. And because of those two components, it's completely opposite from the centralized and the trust required within banks and the fiat system. And we've never had a decentralized, secure monetary system ever in the history of humanity. And now that we have that, and you see the difference, you just can't look back at the other thing. That the legacy system is flawed in the respect that humans are involved. Humans have a tendency to manipulate. If you had a money printer at home where you could print your own money, without any consequences, I think most people would do that. There's no way they wouldn't. So ultimately, Bitcoin brings that. And then ultimately, also with that, when you go down a layer deeper, you realize that the current system requires more money to be created in order to pay off the debt. And the whole system's just based on debt, but that's making everything more expensive. That's causing the cost of living. It's causing asset prices to increase. When you realize that everything's getting exponentially more expensive, wages aren't going up at the same rate by any respect. But ultimately, when you see then that Bitcoin as a neutral money that's decentralized and secure, it allows the free market to operate. Whereas the current system is not a free market, it's manipulated, it requires higher prices. The neutral money that Bitcoin brings, it actually should be causing prices to reduce or go down over time because technology is improving things. Things should be getting cheaper for us all, but the current system makes things more expensive. And then when I look at my family, look at my kids, thinking, what's it going to be like in 10 years, 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years down the line? And if it stays on the same path, things are just going to continue to get more and more expensive. Younger people aren't going to be able to afford houses. Asset prices are going to soar because of the constant inflation that is built into the system and is a requirement of the system. When you kind of grasp that and get your head around that, and as I say, that does take time. Bitcoin is that solution. Bitcoin is the core thing that we need to be focusing on. And also it's something that it's not forced on us, it's an option. People can opt in to using Bitcoin. But I think the core thing is just getting that understanding, first of all, and taking the time to realize what it is, and compare it to the current system that we have. And once you do that, that opens up the path to a more hopeful future.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. It does, yeah. Uh, once you start going down this rabbit hole and you start learning, well, like what we've learned and what so many people that we know now have learned, yeah, it just and you change your mindset as well because it is a big mindset shift that you have to do. In
Yeah.
fairness, yeah,
Oh yeah, like
uh,
mindset's massive. As I say, when you go through that, and it's difficult with regards to relationships, as we kind of touched on before we came on. From a if you've got a partner, or wife, husband, and you're kind of taking the time to learn about Bitcoin, it can be challenging in a relationship. It can put a strain, and it certainly put a strain on myself and my wife's relationship over the last 5, 6 years being involved in learning about the space and learning about Bitcoin. Because, if your partner's not on the same page, you really have to have conviction to what you're focusing on. And over time, thankfully, Sarah, my wife now has come around to realizing either she's been worn down by me constantly talking about it, but things have clicked for her, especially this year. They've clicked together and she's realized that, yes, actually this is required, this is necessary. I need to, focus on this, as opposed to putting money into a bank and trying to earn interest. Bitcoin is money that can't be taken from you. It's money you own. So there's certain key concepts that, you need to get your head around, and it's a big mindset shift. Because when you're so ingrained in working in a fiat-based system, which everybody is, we've all been born into this system, and it's a fiat-based experiment, you could call it. You have to really have a sense of conviction around what Bitcoin is, what you understand it to be. And then moving forward with that, you gotta, sacrifice certain things and hope that things come together again once other people understand it. And it does, it definitely impacts on relationships, even friends. When you talk to friends, it can be quite tricky. They sometimes think you're a bit crazy. And thankfully, I think the narrative is shifting in, especially this past year or so. It's starting to shift a little bit. And I foresee hopefully that will continue to develop, and people are having more conversations around Bitcoin, and people are getting a clearer insight and a clearer thought process on what it is, instead of just reading mainstream headlines or sort of, social media posts around this scam or this, that, and the other. It's just understanding it for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as well, uh, as we know, since like January 10th, the institutions are in now into Bitcoin. They're starting to do their homework on it. Uh, the whole narrative out there, I think, in the media is going to change, and we can see it already. The way even recently, uh, Bitcoin is becoming political now in
Mm.
America. The elections are coming over here into Ireland and Europe and the UK. You're going to see a lot of these politicians now and maybe their staffers around them starting to learn about it and understanding that there's a lot of people looking at this, a lot of their citizens looking at this and people in their country. So they're going to have to embrace it as well at some stage, or else they're going to be left behind.
Well, that's it. And it brings this whole game theory into process. Like, it's the fact that, you've got US elections, you've got the president, and Donald Trump, and, people mentioning and talking about Bitcoin and actually positioning themselves to be, pro Bitcoin, pro self-custody. Obviously there's Ethereum's been brought into it as well, but it'll be interesting to see locally here within European elections, UK, etc. elections. It'll be interesting just to see if anything's brought up around Bitcoin, because I still think, especially with the UK, potentially Europe as well, they're always a few steps behind
Yeah, we
in
are, yeah,
general
a few
what they
years
should
behind
be.
in fairness, like, yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
do be like, yeah, yeah. So
And
maybe not so much this time around,
yeah.
but over the next couple of years with the likes of like, and a lot of people don't understand as well, like who's getting in here, like, the big asset firm managers are getting in, the likes of BlackRock, Fidelity, all these big people are coming in now, and the truth be known, they control everything. They control the
Well,
media, they control everything out there. So that's why the narrative, as I was saying from last year, is going to start changing, and we can see it already.
oh, massively. Yeah. As you say, like BlackRock, all these institutions getting involved, pension funds, hedge funds. And it's just the start of it, I think, with the ETF and, starting up as well. It's, I think most people again, and again, if I rewind myself back to maybe, pre-2019, I wouldn't have any awareness of what would be going on within these, institutional space, with BlackRock, with all these big hedge funds, etc. Like, as a normal person working in a job or working in a business, it wouldn't be on my radar. And only being brought into the space, learning more about Bitcoin, you start to realize how economics function, how the world functions. It's all, as Jeff Booth says, money is superordinate to laws. So those people that control the money strings, the money printer, those are the people that are making the changes within the world. Those are the people that are directing the course of civilization, if you want to put it like that. Um, and when Bitcoin comes to the table, which it has done in a big way over the last year, especially in these big institutions, um, it there's no going back from that. It's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to proliferate into society. Be it, yes, Bitcoin's designed as a grassroots, bottom up type movement, I suppose you could call it. But yes, these institutions are coming in, and people fear that maybe they'll be able to control a large portion of the supply and things like that. But I don't think that's the case. It's a small percentage. yes, they're buying Bitcoin, buying lots of Bitcoin in recent months, but when you look at the overall supply of Bitcoin, I think it's 57, 58% is held by individuals, and it's only realistically a small percentage is held by institutions currently, and only 6 point something% left to be mined in the next sort of 100 years. So it's it's a big, I think it's a big shift this year, especially with institutional involvement. And again, it's so early, it's still really early. A lot of people in the space feel that, things have run away from them, the prices run away, but I personally don't see that. I think it's got so much room to grow over the next few decades, effectively. And I don't make price predictions generally, but just the way that the Bitcoin, what it brings to humanity, what it brings to individuals, I think it's such an important concept. And when you see these bigger, you Black Rocks and these big players in the global monetary space coming in such a way, then you can't ignore it. You simply can't. And I think it would be stupid to ignore it at this stage.
Yeah, yeah, ignore it at your own peril because even when we were talking about money there, yeah, can you talk little bit about the evolution of money over time and what we're looking at and what we can see is about to actually happen with the new type of money that they're looking to launch?
Yeah, like I suppose you get the evolution of money. You're always comparing Bitcoin to gold. Prior to Bitcoin coming along, gold was that hard asset. It was the hardest asset we had. It was, it was a 1.5% inflation rate. Yes, they can dig more out of the ground, but um, I think that's the problem too. A lot of people don't realize is that, the current money system, it's been forced upon us. Gold wasn't created by governments. It wasn't forced on us by governments as a monetary asset. The primary monetary asset over the last, what, 6,000 years, it was civilizations, converged on gold as that element, that asset that they wanted to store their wealth in. Primarily because of its scarcity, the scarcity of gold. It's only that it's got the lowest inflation rate of any asset. Well, that can be used as money, I suppose. And it's got all the properties that you can, have as money, durability, divisibility, etc. But gold has a flaw in that you can't transport it very easily. It's expensive to move. Trying to custody gold, own your own gold. I think it was at 1930 something. America made it illegal to own gold privately as well during a period of time. So it can be seized from you. The other key flaw with gold as well was that, you had to custody it. You had to trust an institution, a third party, to actually take custody of that gold. And then the banks played, games with custodying gold and issuing more paper receipts than they actually had in reserves, and that led to fractional reserve banking, which we still have today. Well, we probably have zero reserve banking today, don't we, where they can just create what they want out of thin air. It is literally funny money, and when you talk to somebody who isn't in the Bitcoin space or aware of money, they look at you as if you're crazy, even though this is actually how it works. But no, the money has always been flawed in that respect because there's always that human involvement. There's that element of manipulation. Whereas now we've got with Bitcoin, you have that technological aspect. You've got all these elements that come together to create Bitcoin with proof of work, with difficulty adjustment, with the way it's designed as an open, transparent ledger. I think somebody said it is. I think I'm true in saying it's probably been the first advancement in accounting in the last 700 years as a ledger technology. Because money at the end of the day is just a ledger, in that it's triple entry accounting. It's audited every 10 minutes. It's totally decentralized and secure. And when you have that, when you realize Bitcoin is a fixed supply asset of 21 million Bitcoin, that can't be changed, that can't be increased or inflated. It's the first fixed supply asset, the first truly scarce asset that we've had in the history of humanity, even more so than gold. It functions better than gold. It certainly functions better than fiat money. It holds your value through space and time. And the fact that you can move 1 billion euros worth of value from here to Tokyo and have it settled within half an hour and pay maybe, I don't know, depending on the fees at the time, between 6 and 12 euros for the transaction. It's insane. You simply can't do that with any form of other form of money, be it fiat, be it gold as an asset, as a physical asset. It's a total paradigm shift. And I think that's the thing too, because it's such a paradigm shift and such a change to mindset and to change to how economic value is transacted and stored. People can't, there's nothing to compare it to in history. We've never had this before. We've never had this fixed finite supply asset on a monetary network that can't be hacked, that hasn't been manipulated, that can't be changed or altered. Whereas you compare that to the current system that can easily be changed, altered, manipulated, inflated, and which is a requirement of the system. So I think it's such an amazing thing. It's such an amazing discovery in that, we have this thing now that we all can embrace. And it helps everybody. It's not just benefiting BlackRocks, these big institutions, really financially, cash flow rich companies that can purchase Bitcoin at the price it's at. You can literally buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. You can buy, a euro's worth of Bitcoin, at $10 worth of Bitcoin, £20 worth of Bitcoin, and store it and hold that. So everybody has access to this network. And you've got over 8 billion people on the planet. And so many of them are currently unbanked. They can't get access to traditional financial systems or payment rails. This gives people hope. And I think that is the general underlying kind of trend to this. It's just the hope that it brings to improve societies and humanity. And there's so many, like you can go into all different aspects with Bitcoin. It impacts so many aspects of your life that you don't realize. And it's an ever learning journey as well. You never become an expert in Bitcoin. You can never really understand it. It's a constant learning process. And I think that's what's really, from my point of view, really appealing about it, and all of that.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about property rights. Yeah. And when you own Bitcoin compared to other assets that you have, a lot of people buy second and third properties as investment properties. So how would you compare real estate to Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, I suppose
And,
like real estate.
and probably as well, there's changes happening behind the scenes regarding property rights as well that probably a lot of people don't know about with what's happening with maybe the WEF and the WHO and all these corporations that are coming along.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a key aspect, and I think this will be something that over the next 5 to 10 years is going to play out. And it's such an important thing to kind of get your head around as well, and to really understand what's happening and what's changing, especially from, as you said, the WEF and different government organizations trying to push certain things. But ultimately, owning your own property and having property rights, I think it's a core principle and core value that we should all have. It offers us dignity. It offers us something that we have full ownership of ourselves. I suppose knowing Bitcoin and owning Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin in your own self-custody, as in holding it in cold storage, you have full ownership of that. Nobody can touch that. Nobody can seize it from you. You can literally travel to the other side of the world, other end of the world, with a seed phrase in your head and carry your wealth with you. Um, Asset prices, because property, you're at the whim of the central banks inflating asset prices by inflating the money supply, and people think that they're making money. They're seeing their wealth in nominal terms increase on paper from like a property portfolio, but ultimately in real terms, when you look at inflation, when you look at the cost of everything, and when you factor in certain things like property taxes, somebody can come along and seize it. The government could seize your property from you. You've got no control over what's happening there. Or if you've got, you're a landlord, you're having to rent your premises. There's so many other extra expenses involved there, from council taxes and various things also, plus insurance. So, it's trying to get a clear understanding, first of all, of what it is to own your own money. And it's the same thing when you invest. You're at the whim of a company, like even in a stock or anything. You're hoping that the company will actually run it in a certain way that will add value to that actual entity. So you've got no control over it. When you have Bitcoin, you have full control over your money, full ownership, full property rights, and that's such an important concept to consider. And when you own, with real estate, with assets, yes, as a second best, I suppose, to Bitcoin. Currently, they are holding value, holding and increasing people's wealth. If you're lucky enough to hold those assets or have bought those assets maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago. But from this point onwards, the price of everything's gone crazy, and house prices especially. If you price, I suppose, if you those charts recently, if you price property in Bitcoin terms, it's fallen so much. The average house price in Ireland, for instance, or even in the UK, I think it was in 2016, was around about 507 Bitcoin for a property. Today, it's around about 3 or 4 Bitcoin, depending on your location. So all prices will fall in Bitcoin terms. And when you view the world in that respect and realize Bitcoin is money that you own, it offers, full ownership, full property rights to you as an individual. Again, as Michael Saylor says, there is no second best, and there's not. So I think, yeah, property rights from that point of view. And then when you look at, again, looking at what's happening with CBDCs and what's happening there, that will all be playing out over the next 5 to 10 years. And that will be an issue with, property rights, privacy issues. That's a deep, deep topic, which will take too long to go into right now, I suppose. But again, I think understanding the property rights, what Bitcoin offers you as an individual, allows you to step back from the existing system, and that can't really impact you in any way, no matter what they do. What happens with CBDCs, with fiat currency over the next 5 to 10 years, if you have an own Bitcoin, you have full ownership over that. So that's money you can own, money you spend, and money you can, store for a future reference, a future time that will increase and appreciate in real terms.
Yeah. And let's touch a little bit on that CBDCs, yeah? So for people that are just new to this and they're just coming across the channel, yeah, what is a CBDC? And
Yeah,
how is, we were talking about money, so we were in fiat currency, and now we're talking about the CBDC. So what is that?
Yeah, well, central bank digital currencies. So they're going to be developing these where effectively central banks will be able to directly issue money effectively to you as an individual or a business. It's similar to like with Bitcoin or with crypto space, you have your own wallet. Generally, most money will become digital over the coming decade. Again, they're trying to get cash out of society because they can't track that. Governments can't track and trace cash transactions. Um, and with CBDCs, they'll basically be able to monitor and surveil every single transaction that every single individual has and sort of spends over whatever period of time. They can put restrictions on that, with wallets and with digital currencies. They may kind of, I suppose, advertise or kind of promote this, and people may think that this is some kind of crypto blockchain technology, and they'll use all these buzzwords for it.
They'll
But
give us the
differentiating,
benefits.
Mhm.
They'll give us the benefits.
Yeah, yeah,
They'll give us
the
they'll
benefits.
sell us the benefits of CBDC according to them
Yeah.
and why it'll be
Yeah, yeah.
good for
From their
us.
point of view, that they'll sell the benefits, definitely. But again, that's why it's key to think for yourself and to really understand this. But ultimately, it's taken away a lot of your privacy, a lot of your privacy rights. And if governments are considering maybe you've had too much meat this month, or you've traveled too far in your car, there's too many emissions, your carbon footprints, off the charts for November, December, they could literally restrict your payments. They could restrict your spending on what produce or what goods and services that you spend. And it's a very kind of dystopian kind of outlook when you look at that. Again, it's something that's a very fluid, ongoing topic to discuss. And again, there's a lot more experts in the space that
Mm.
would have a lot more information around it from compared to myself. But I see it as a threat to privacy, as a threat to your property rights. But ultimately, I'm not worried about it because I hold Bitcoin, and I understand Bitcoin to a certain degree, enough of a degree to not have to really spend too much time worrying about it, I guess. That's probably the key thing. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. But the thing about it is, well, when it happens and when they do switch it, yeah, like nobody really knows when, but it's moving fast, yeah, faster than like when I first heard about it, I thought maybe it was going to be like 5, 6, 7 years, but I don't think that
Mhm.
anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
this is coming faster than most people think.
Yeah, you could be right. You possibly, yeah, you most likely are right in that respect. And again, it's not that I think it's being brought about from any malicious intent. I think a lot of people working on these things have good intentions, and they feel they're on the right path from either an environmental standpoint, from a more effective, efficient economy potentially. And you know, I think everybody inherently has good intentions. But ultimately, there's so much like it's not going to be any different from fiat currency. It's going to be restricting your privacy, but they're going to be functioning it and using it the same way. It's not like they can't create more CBDC out of thin air and issue that. That's exactly what they'll do. It'll be functioning the same way as fiat currency currently is. It's a form of fiat currency. It's just using a different technology medium to disperse it across the globe. But yeah, you're right. I think you're right. It's going to happen quick. Exponential change within technology. It happens so fast. It'll be slow, so then all of a sudden it'll just kick into society, and people will be using these things without really realizing what they are. But they'll just assume, this would be an issue to me, so therefore I just have to use that. And when you don't have a choice, people who aren't aware of Bitcoin, they'll feel they won't have a choice, so they'll just have to move to this new monetary technology that's helping society. That's how they'll be pitched the concept. It's more efficient, it's quicker, it's easier to manage your money, your finances, and people will just accept it, without a question. Only until you realize again what Bitcoin is, how the system works, that's when you will question it and have a bit of resistance around it. So yeah, it'll be interesting just to see how it all plays out. Yeah.
Actually, yeah. And a lot of people think in their own mind as well that like they're going to try and fight to keep cash going, and people out there thinking that they're winning with keeping cash going. But if you look at the numbers and you look at the real data, the banks are closing down rapidly the last couple of years,
Yeah.
and there's 3% of cash actually in the monetary system. That's all that's it. 3%. The rest of it
3%, yeah.
is digitalized in a way already, just on the screen. Yeah. So they haven't got a huge big job really to do when you think about it.
No, it is very true. And like, money's been digital for years, potentially a couple of decades now. As these numbers on the screen that you see, you log into your bank account, they're effectively just digits on the screen. But yeah, the 3% figure of actual physical cash circulating is minuscule. Like they'll have no issue eradicating that over the coming years. Like it's just going to be it's a natural process, and it'll be pitched as a natural process to take us into this digital age, with all these buzzwords. So yeah, you can fight for cash. Certainly, it's a very noble cause. Having freedom to transact, having privacy over transactions. Um, but the more you realize, the more you see that con the powers that be, they require and need and want more control over society. And again, potentially from a point of view where they feel this is what's best to help society. Again, I don't think it's a malicious thing. It's again, you're going to have certain individuals and people that potentially do look at it like that, but you can't not have that in society. That's how the world works. But yeah, it's definitely going to be people think it's going to be a gradual change, but yeah, I think again within five or so years, potentially sooner, cash will effectively filter out of society, I reckon.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. So what would you say to people then regarding how to protect themselves? I know we've been talking a lot about Bitcoin there, and maybe people changing their mindset as well. And how can they prepare for this? Because a lot of people just talk and talk, and I like to have problem reaction solution. What's the
Yeah.
solution, Alan?
Well, ultimately, yes. You know what I'm going to say. The solution is Bitcoin. That's the fact. But it's just having that awareness, and the mindset is trying to knowledge is power. Effectively, you gotta learn. You gotta develop an understanding of what money is. What we discussed in this. What money is. Why there's a problem? Why is that problem an issue? Why is it affecting you as an individual or your business or whatever it may be? And then if you look at the future, like what's the solution? And when you discover Bitcoin and learn Bitcoin effectively is that solution, and approach it from a point of view, I think most people do approach Bitcoin from a point of view as a skeptic around it. Have that doubt, try to debunk it, try to, reduce it down to the fact that it might fail in some respect or form. And tens of thousands of people have already come along and tried this and try to figure out how's Bitcoin going to fail. And when you realize there's very few scenarios, if any, compared to what we're looking at with having not Bitcoin in your portfolio or in your life in any way, shape, or form, the only way to protect, from my point of view, is to use this, truly scarce, fixed, finite supply asset, that holds your wealth, that will grow your wealth over time, and protect your wealth, protect your future, protect your family by storing your wealth and your economic energy in Bitcoin, because it's an energy network at the end of the day. Money is a medium, medium of exchange, store of value, unit of account, but ultimately it's your economic energy. Where do you want that to go in the future? And that's another way of saying, how do I save my money? How do I grow my wealth? That's not going to happen using fiat currency. it's not really going to happen holding gold. If you want to really, grow your wealth over time in this current state of society, state of age, state of economy, Bitcoin is that life raft that every single person on this planet has the option of putting their economic energy into, or their money into. So I just say protect yourself by first getting an awareness and understanding of what Bitcoin is and what money is and how the system currently works. It doesn't take a lot to realize there's issues with the system, because you just got to look around you and ask a few simple questions on how money's created. Why can I not store my wealth and my money in current currency? And why assets are increasing in price? Why are all these things happening? Then understand, what Bitcoin is, how it functions, and then ultimately you come to your own conclusion. I'm not sitting here telling everybody buy Bitcoin or advising you to go and, buy as much Bitcoin as you can. You got to come to that conclusion for yourself. But ultimately, for me, that is the protection mechanism for individuals, for businesses, and society going forward.
Yeah. And I hope some people go and start learning about it if they come across this show. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that's what it's
Yeah.
all about. And it's changed our lives.
And I think for your, like, again, from your show, from the people that you're interviewing as well, some key kind of influential characters in the space who are ethically sound individuals who want to make the world a better place. I think that's the other thing. It's differentiating between Bitcoin and crypto. When you see all this crypto stuff, you get sucked into that environment and people get put off by it. But ultimately, when Bitcoin boils down to the fact it's people in the space, and anybody that I've come across that truly understands or has gained a good understanding of Bitcoin, they're wanting to make the world a better place. They're wanting to make, money better, to make society better, to improve the future for their families. And it's learning from those resources, I think, as well. As what I'm trying to say is there's so much stuff on the internet, but going to reputable resources and kind of consuming content from those places, similar to what you're doing with your show here. Just listen to those individuals that are being interviewed, and learn from them, and then go and do the work for yourself.
Yeah, that's it. Do the work. That's what we all say, isn't it? Because if
Yeah,
you don't do the work, you'll stay in that old system. Yeah,
yeah,
it's time.
absolutely.
We
Yeah,
have an opportunity. Everybody has the opportunity that we seen, and we uh, took a grasp of, and we're after pulling ourselves out of all that from before. And
yeah,
you know what I mean? When you look at it, and I was only talking to Jeff Booth about this recently, last week, and when you actually look at this, and anybody that's gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and understands what it is, I don't know anybody that's gone back.
no, yeah, no, same here. Anybody that I talk to, anybody that has spent, a good couple of 100 hours potentially understanding Bitcoin, because it does take time. You never, as I say, you never fully understand it, but you're always learning. It's always a process. But anybody that has put in the work to get to the point of conviction and realization, they have never gone back. And I haven't met one person to date that has. So that says a lot for it as well. Yeah.
And before we wrap it up, I'd like to just talk a little bit about, your Stats for Sight initiative. Talk to us a
Mhm.
little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. It's something, it's still at very early stages, but like I've been an optometrist, run my own practice now for the last nearly 17 years. And it's trying to make it more of an impact. I realized over about 3 or 4 years ago, there's over 2 billion people in the world that have issues and can't get access to sight care services. And there's about 1.3 billion people that simply need a pair of prescription glasses, like eyeglasses, to transform their lives. At the moment, they can't see, they can't, get a job, they can't function because their sight's not good enough. So it has a massive impact on their ability to earn money for themselves in whatever part of the world they're at, has massive impact on their lives. So trying to set up an initiative where specifically powered by Bitcoin, and trying to set up a Bitcoin type fund where I can, you know, ideally, initially my idea is to sell my glasses. I've set up a range called HODL Eyewear. Want to try to sell those frames and take a proportion of the sale of every frame and put it into like a Bitcoin fund to let that appreciate in value over time. And then hopefully use that within a few years to impact and create more of a service for people in especially the global south who don't have access to eye care services or glasses, and to ideally work with charities and organizations that are working and setting up circular economies around Bitcoin. So that's kind of the general theme of it. It's Sats for Sight initiative is just to try to create a charitable fund for creating more awareness to create access to sight care and eye care services and provide prescription glasses to people who require them desperately. And that would make such a transformative impact on their lives, effectively, yeah.
Lovely, lovely. And gives a little note about your podcast as well. And you're doing a few podcasts as well, yeah? And if
Yeah,
anybody wants
again,
to come on
it's
and
coming
talk,
from
how would
yeah,
they get on there?
sorry.
If anybody wants to come on and talk on the podcast, yeah,
Oh yeah,
we'd always be
absolutely. Anybody, it's set up more, I guess, from a small business owner's point of view. It's trying to really interview and get in touch with business owners that are currently accepting Bitcoin, learning from individuals in the space to try to, get that word out to more business owners to really understand and embrace Bitcoin and see how it's impacting their lives and their businesses, and get an idea of their story around that. So yeah, it's the stats for that podcast, and it's just, I guess, it's a way for me to get into the space more as well. I'm passionate about working in Bitcoin. I see my future being more and more involved in the Bitcoin space, and I want to try to promote adoption, increase awareness wherever I go. And I think having a platform where I can, impact more business owners, especially who have come along potentially the same journey as myself, or maybe stuck in that mindset of, stuck in their business type thing, wanting to kind of create more impact for themselves, for their families. Whereas they have this tool now that they may not be aware of in Bitcoin, and just try to get that awareness out there. So that's generally the basis. But yeah, I'm really loving having discussions with people from different walks of life, different expertise levels within the space as well. It's just amazing the individuals you meet. And I think that's the thing within the Bitcoin space. When you meet somebody who's in Bitcoin or another Bitcoiner, they're on the same wavelength as you. Their kind of mindset's similar. It's easy to have a conversation around these things, and it's enjoyable, and it becomes a passion. So yeah, that's effectively what I'm at with that.
lovely, lovely. So what are the digital handles that you're on your website?
Yeah, well, the website you can go, well, there's alanbryden.com, or you can go to satsforthat.com, which is the podcast site. And then I'm on X now. It's HODLEYE, HODLEYE on X. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well, just Alan Bryden. Effectively, you can get me on that. So yeah, just trying to get out on a few more platforms. And especially outside of X or outside of Twitter, it's trying to, put this content out more on the likes of Instagram, Facebook, where individuals who haven't been within the space or haven't any awareness of what Bitcoin is, that's where I'm trying to push more of this information and content. And it's challenging, like it's challenging, trying to get this content in front of people who have a misconception of what Bitcoin is, based around, as I say, mainstream type narratives. So I think that's the challenge from a grassroots level, from a small business level, and trying to grow adoption, merchants accepting Bitcoin. All those areas are key for me, and that's where I'm kind of focusing my energy on now.
Okay, amazing, amazing. So thanks for your time, Alan, and we'll
Right.
catch up soon. Yeah,
Perfect. Good stuff, Lawrence. Appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
thank you. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.